This is the Balanced Advisor Podcast with Dr. Travis Perry, helping financial advisors like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. I have with us in studio today Mr. Jeff Maas. He's the co-founder and CEO of Retirement Security Centers. It's a 34-person firm that specializes in retirement income distribution and has 1.5 billion of AUM. Jeff thrives on a challenge and enjoys a growth mindset in all facets. He lives in Northern California with his wife, a 3-year-old daughter, and 1-year-old son. Welcome, Jeff, to the podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Perry.
Appreciate you having us with us today. And there's a lot of great things that we're talking about on the pre-show. Some kind of how you got into the industry, and I think that story needs to be told. So I just love your drive, and when it talks about being thriving on a challenge in your bio, I think your story of your entrepreneur mindset really needs to be emphasized here. So please, would you tell us what kind of drove you into this industry per se?
Yeah, so a couple quick stories there. So growing up as a kid, I just always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial itch, whether it was lemonade stand or one of my good friends growing up when we were 12 years old, we created flyers called Jeff and Paul Can Do It All. We listed dog walking, babysitting, wood stacking. I mean, we'd do anything that you were willing to part with your money for, to hand it over to us. We were interested in serving in that area. And so we blanketed the neighborhood with flyers around that. And the business did well enough that Paul and I had to recruit other people to help us in that endeavor. And so I just kind of took that entrepreneurial mindset all the way through junior high and into college. When I went off to college, I was a business major and knew that was just an area that I wanted to focus on. And I was lucky enough to get hooked up with what turned out to be way more than just a internship. It turned into a lifelong, I would say, mentorship, and a co-founder came out of that internship. And I've been with the same broker dealer for 18 years now. And that mentor, his name is Briggs Matsko. He and I went on to co-found our current firm, which is Retirement Security Centers. And so the fun little line there is that I went from intern to CEO of that firm over the last 18 years.
What a great story. The fact that, you began as a kid doing all these things, it's your neighbors. It gives me hope for my kids. We don't give them the allowance. We don't do that kind of thing. My background in financial planning, advising, it's just not good behavioral, training in finance. And so they've always done, neighborhood leaf blowing, snow removal. They've even sold rocks that they painted on the side of the road, and those kinds of things, because they know mom and dad aren't going to give them anything. I've got to go figure this out. And it really has fueled their entrepreneurial spirit. So what a great story, man. I appreciate you sharing how you got in the industry. Everybody comes in a different angle, from a different direction. And it's nice to hear what you've done as an intern. Well, listen, I know you've got a big team of advisors. You have a family of your own, and you said you're closing in on that big 4-0 this year. So you're young, you've got things going. Tell me a little bit about what your definition of work-life balance really is. Everybody has a different one, a different angle on it, but just curious as we get started on this show, what your definition really is.
Yeah, it's such a tough question. I think there's so many great answers to that. I would say that my answer would be choosing to allocate my time and energy today that I won't regret in the future. I think one of the big advantages that I've personally had in my career is being a financial advisor to people that, at least from the money side, have been successful. They want to share. It's one of those things where when somebody goes and sees a movie or goes to a great restaurant, they can't help but tell you about it. And so I've had the opportunity to be young and just be a sponge and absorb what 60, 70, 80, 90 people on their deathbed have shared with what would I do differently. And, one of the things that you hear often, it's a little bit cliche, but, you hear maybe I wouldn't have worked as much, right? For somebody that was maybe a small business owner, like a lot of advisors, and just poured their heart into their business. And maybe that sacrifice some of their family time or health or whatever else it is, right? And so I think just being purposeful on your decisions, and it's not just time, but it's also energy today, that as you look back on those, you won't regret. That would be my answer.
Love that. Yeah, living life with no regrets, spending the time where you really value it, really kind of shines through. And, as we talk about this, as an advisor and also as a CEO of the company, that leadership role, there's new dimensions there, right, that you didn't have as an advisor. Maybe walk us through what work-life balance looked like as an intern versus what work-life balance looks like now. And we're going to, talk about some different challenges and stuff in between, but maybe do a comparison for those, new in the business to those who are, in leadership.
Yeah. So the analogy that I would use is being an intern was a little bit like the water stream coming at you was the size of a straw. It's pretty manageable. You can deal with it. And being the CEO is more like a fire hose. You're just trying to pick the best and most important pieces to deal with and deflect and shield the rest and hope somebody else picks it up, or it's not that important and that water is going to hit the ground, just as an example. It's definitely different. I mean, back when I was an intern, it was much more of a time-based, you clock in, you clock out type position. You have very specific roles and duties, not a lot of latitude or freedom or really creativity expected in that type of position. And as you move, into a leadership role, because I actively still meet with clients, quite a few clients, 223 as we did our analysis to wrap up the year. So I still have a big active block of clients where I am either the lead advisor or I'm a joint advisor. But then I've also got this company that requires care and maintenance and feeding. And so, yeah, definitely certainly more time commitment needed than the 8 to 5 clock in, clock out. But also just more thought and energy has to go into, those decisions. I mean, I remember back when I was an intern, you kind of clocked out at 5 o'clock and I went, yeah, I nailed it today. I did everything that I was asked to do. And, maybe I even went above and beyond and was able to accomplish part of tomorrow's work or a project early or something like that. When you're in a leadership role, even if you're just a solo advisor, I don't know how you ever turn it off, right? I mean, if I wanted to, and it's almost like working out, it's a skill that I've had to develop, but the ability to turn off in my head work and not think about what should we be doing to improve our customer service experience? Where is the next growth hurdle going to come from us? How do we solve COVID? I mean, the list goes on, and just being able to turn that off and kind of decompress is a skill that I'm still working on, and I would say in my infancy of working on, but important nonetheless.
Yeah, great. I really appreciate that. I think that does describe a lot of what people are feeling in leadership roles, like drinking from the fire hose versus, the straw. However, I think as an intern, especially in this industry where you're learning so much, you're trying to get licensed, you're trying to figure out how to market and do all of the training of whatever broker dealer you begin with, you feel like you probably are at the time drinking from a fire hose. And so people that are listening to this, next geners that are like, wait a minute, like, what does that fire hose look like? But I like your deflect and shield type of arrangement there. That makes a lot of sense. As an advisor and as a leader now, you talked about this ability to turn it off. Let's go there, because I know that's a big challenge for so many that I personally work with, on how to turn off the business and how to focus on, your family or other, community things or your health and spending time with friends. Like how do you turn that off, Jeff?
Yeah, so like I said, it's a little bit of a skill that I think can be developed, and it's really never ending. One of the things that's helped me, I'm a participant in the Strategic Coach program. And so they have a methodology that they use to help you. Really, it's more of a mindset methodology than anything. But they break up days into 3 different days. They call those days focus days, where you're in revenue generation mode. You're in front of clients, etc. Buffer days, where you're setting up those days, you're prepping or you're working on the business. And then free days. And their definition of free days is completely free. That doesn't mean, and it's for a 24-hour period. So a free day is not Friday afternoon, I'm not going to work. That's not a free day. It's all of Friday, and I'm not even going to read the Wall Street Journal, right? I'm like completely detached from it. And I think that's hard. And then that's something that I struggle with. And part of the reason that I struggle with that is I'm one of those people that it sounds weird to say, but I enjoy work. Like I joke with, our team, if I won the lottery, things would look different, right? If I won $300 million, things would look different, but I'd still be here. I'd still be a big active part of this company and a driver of it. And it's because I enjoy it. And so I think that's that hard for me. It's difficult to quote unquote turn it off when I'm excited about it, right? It's like, hey, I'm sitting here and it's a Saturday afternoon and I'm eating gelato, and boom, this business idea pops up into my head. Well, what if we did this? And this would be really cool. What if we did a gelato making party with all of our clients, right? And it's just like naturally my head just goes back to improving the business. And so that's been a challenge for me.
Yeah, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that because it's this challenge for most that I coach. And I know a lot of people have different business coaches out there that have, various helps. And I know strategic coaches is one that a lot of advisors know of and are well thought of in the industry. And one of the myths that I bring up in my to be released book, actually it's available on ebook right now. It'll be paperback March 24th. If you're listening before, check it out. Afterwards, it should be there on Amazon. But the idea is that the productivity myth is one that it keeps to perpetuate itself. And you kind of touch on it with the focus days, revenue generation days, the free days, which is a great idea. It's kind of this ideal calendar, right? But there's some things to be said about the personal side that can keep us and have, give us some boundaries. So I'm going to kind of explore that with you a little bit deeper, if it's okay, Jeff. What personal systems do you have in place right now that keep you from, being a workaholic? Because I know you say there's a tendency, there's a drive, you enjoy it, it's fun. And I find that with most advisors, they love what they do. So what are some things that you do that keep you from doing this all the time, 24/7?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I try and set up my calendar in a manner of my focus days. So my client meeting days are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And I typically have a busy week for me is a 10, 1, and 4. And then I do that 3 days in a row. So 9 clients a week, right? And I keep my Monday and my Friday as a buffer day. So those are days where I'm kind of either prepping for the week or cleaning up the week or working on, company initiatives or whatever else it is. And then obviously free days on the weekends. Try not to work on the weekends. And then on a quarterly basis, I'm intentional about setting up my calendar to make sure that overall my time is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And it doesn't work out perfectly. I don't sit there and actually pull out a calculator and go, I'm 36%. I must do something different. But it's having that mindset of 1/3 of my time in addition to weekends. So weekends count, Saturday and Sunday count. But in addition to that, how else am I taking time off? And for me, I'm one of those people my dad taught me as a kid, work hard, play hard, right? And so I will go 5 days in a row working, and I'll do that for 2 months straight. But then I'll take a week or maybe more off. I just looking at my calendar forward, I just booked 3 1+ week vacations coming up. And so I'm not one that says like, I'm going to take every Friday off. It doesn't work for me. I'd rather chunk that. I'd rather go hard, put my head down, work, and then try and escape. And I think that also gets back to the separation that we talked about and really having those true disconnected free days. For me, if it's a Friday afternoon or even a full Friday to disconnect, it just doesn't work for me. I need I'm on a cabin on a lake, like fishing, like I'm totally disconnected for a whole entire week. One of my favorite trips is there's no cell service, there's no internet. Like the option is not even there. You completely disconnect. And so that's my refresh and my recharge system.
Great tips, man. I love what you're doing there. I recommend very, very similar, those buffer days, the work hard, play hard mentality. You really do have to disconnect from technology, from people, and you've got to be in a different location. When my wife and I went to Mexico for a week at the beginning of this year, it was, I went a completely different place. I don't want to think about work. As fun as it is, this is a totally different adventure in the Yucatan, flying through the jungle and, circling. I'm not thinking about work. I mean, do ideas come? Because my mind, is racing, as all of ours are, right? They're always racing around. However, you're in a totally different zone. And yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to this idea of having no cell service, no internet, in a cabin, enjoying themselves. In fact, I had a client who's very similar to that, finally was able to take a vacation. And he used to take one of these flip phones so that nobody could find him. And he would just have it just as an emergency, right? Because he knew if he took his stuff with him, he's going to be working. So I love, these are great tips. So that said, you have some boundaries. You have some things that still are, trying to keep you from that constant urge, that itch that you want to scratch, that work itch. What do you think is, challenging about, even after setting up all those boundaries, why is it still challenging to not get there and not work, even with those boundaries set up? What do you think it might be for you?
Yeah, so I think for any advisor, whether you're beginning in your career or you're towards the end of your career, you still, the buck stops with you, right? And so the client sees you as their advisor. And, one time we had a client, didn't luckily say it to me, but to another one of our advisors in our firm. And she said, "I don't want to speak with your little assistant." And it was an interesting comment, but, it's kind of a good example. And most of our clients are, more understanding and willing to interface with our staff. They understand. But, it shows you some of the candid mindset of the client, right? Like, I want an answer on this. This is an issue. It's important. Whether I feel like I'm a big deal or not, I want to talk to the advisor, right? And so I think that ultimately is it's that fire hose. There's so much coming in, and whether it's defensive work, whether it's offensive work, there's always something that can be done. I mean, I marvel at the Jack Dorsey's, Elon Musk, where they're running multiple companies. I can't even fathom how they do it. How does Joe Biden, newly elected, how does Joe Biden run this country? Like, how does he sleep at all, right? I mean, there's just always something that you could be doing to improve the business, the country, et cetera, right? And so you have to just have that mindset of, I put in a solid effort. I did as much as I could. And I think, part of what Strategic Coach has really taught me, I've been in that program for 6 years now, is you have to know when to call it quits in order to do a better job the next day. I mean, you could work 24/7 and you could do it for 3 days in a row, but your fourth day, you're absolutely going to burn out, and that's not what's best for the company. And so you have to put those boundaries and parameters in place. And like I said, I mean, I'm a newbie, I would say, at, I can talk about these things, but it doesn't mean that I've certainly mastered any of this. I think it's just an ongoing, I think there's always room for improvement in any of these areas, but there's just so much to do. Yeah. And if you're truly an entrepreneur, your mind it should shut off because you need to have those free days. But when you're working, new things should be coming all the time, right? How can we improve this? What can we be doing better? What's the, think of the SWOT analysis, right? I mean, that's a good example, just kind of classic business 101 of where are our dangers, our threats, what's coming at us from all different areas.
Yeah, SWOT is pretty classic. I like that comment there. What about what do you see, kind of as an issue for most other advisors? You have a team that you work with. You've seen them as they grow, as they come in, retire, start to finish. What do you see as some of the main issues for other advisors with work-life balance?
Yeah, so I think similar. When you're a new advisor, you're chief cook and bottle washer, right? You're doing everything. You're in charge of prospecting. You're in charge of just everything, start to finish. And like I said, the buck stops with you, right? So I don't think it's majorly different whether you're a new advisor or you're a very successful seasoned advisor, been doing it a long time. I think the challenges are still there. I think just like we were talking about with that muscle, example, the muscle gets stronger and you learn to create boundaries and to be able to say no. One of my favorite quotes, many people have said this, but I've seen it attributed to Warren Buffett, which is, what's the difference between successful people and very successful people? Very successful people say no to almost everything, right? So really being intentional about what you say yes to. And again, this is not rocket science. And I try and continually remind myself of, we could be doing 100 things as possible, whether it's me as an individual or our company or whatever it is, but we should really be picking 2 or 3 that we're going to nail, instead of picking 100 and 50 of them fall off and 20 of them were a bad idea in the first place. And we really only get, a few done, and maybe we don't get the correct few that we really should have focused on done. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And then the second thing that I would just say is, most advisors get into this business similar to why I did. They are probably somewhat entrepreneurial. They're good with clients. They can explain fairly complex things. They can get people to follow them, to buy into their recommendations. They are not, at least when they start, they are probably not thinking that they are going to be HR department, that they are going to be the CFO of their firm, right? And whether you're a solo advisor or you've been successful and you're part of a bigger firm, those are all challenges that you at least need to be aware of. You can delegate them. Somebody else can be doing them, but somebody needs to be doing them. And so building out a team and really scaling, I think, is very, very difficult. I mean, that's kind of the big leap to go from a solo advisor to, really expanding. And it's just a lot of challenges there. I mean, just take HR alone, right? There are people that have the skill to manage others, and there are people that don't. And that's a big challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Sure it is. And you touched on this about, helping your advisors learn how to delegate, because this is a big key to being able to, to get those things that are not your top 2 or 3. I call them your sweet spot. And I suggest, 3 to 5 activities, that you should be focusing on each week or each day, and just staying in that sweet spot. And everything else you should be delegating and, touching high level if needed. So let's kind of turn our conversation to how you're able to do some of that. How do you delegate so well? How are things, with your company running so good that you're able to bring on more advisors, increase your staff, and have so many, great clients that you're working with?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is systems and processes. That's the word that comes to mind, right? So, and we are by no means perfect at this, but I feel like we're above average in the sense that when we bring on a new person, it can't be a complete start from scratch, right? Which I think a lot of even big companies struggle with this around not having systems and processes in place, and it's training by osmosis, right? We'll sit next to Joe or Sally and just kind of learn from them and how they do it, right? And as you think about, just a quick example for you, we hired a brand new position. We had an employee that had been with me for 8 years, 9 years, something like that. And she retired, right? She took her own medicine that she was in an analyst position. She's a current client of the firm today, and she reached that point of financial independence, and age-wise, she decided to retire, right? So we have to replace her. So we hire a new person. He is in the office for 3 days. COVID happens. Office shuts down. We are now virtually training an employee, which we have never done before. Not only have we never done that, but we've never operated as a virtual firm before. So as everyone else is learning how to transition their current in-office duties to working from home, we are in California, we have to train this guy over Zoom, right? And so, having those systems and processes in place to be able to say, look, here's a manual, get started reading this while everybody else is trying to figure out, how to set up their home monitor and make sure the dog's not barking in the background. Then we'll come back to you in a couple days, but at least we have something that we can give to you. I think that is probably the number one way that we have been able to scale. We're actually looking at bringing on, have engaged a firm to help in that process. Company's called Playbook Builder, and they basically it is an online operations manual, onboarding manual, basically a knowledge dump or knowledge collector for everything that happens in your company, checklists, videos to go with everything. So really, really cool. And so that's kind of the next level for us is we have these things. They're all in a paper binder. Some of it's online, some of it's scattered, really making it, organized. And when we bring on a customer service person or an analyst person, they follow this path. When we bring on an advisor, they hit a completely different path to follow to be onboarded.
Now, I was literally going to ask, my follow-up question was, what are you using? What technology? What are you doing? And you rolled right into that with the Playbook Builder. I've heard of a lot of different software tools and things, Trainual and others. So it's good to hear what's working for you. I appreciate the advice on delegation, on having those systems and processes in place. I know a lot of times it really is about those systems that we need to have working for us, so that when there are crazy crises and other things, that you can fall back on it and really work. I love that example there. It's been great, Jeff, to be with you today. Get your nuggets of wisdom, your kernels of advice that other advisors can take. Whether they're a new advisor, whether they are leading and helping others. I think this is a great interview. Thanks for your time today. And I know that you do help others out there in the world with retirement planning, and you have an ebook, you got a book that people can download and such. I think just to have you as an advisor to lean on and to have in your back pocket. I know they can go to retirementsecuritycenters.com, connect with you, connect on LinkedIn. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and giving back to the industry.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate all that you're doing to help us grow. And it's like I said, it's a never-ending journey. So you've got some nice job security, because we can never reach the perfection on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Work-life balance is a work in progress, and as for all of us, right? So I agree, Jeff. Thanks for being on the show.